Hey there, everyone. It's Tuesday, and it's so great to be here with you. I'm Donna Hoffman, the interior design advocate and your advocate in all things design. So if it's Tuesday and it's 4 p.m. Eastern time, that means whoosh, everything stops here at the design studio. No matter what we're working on, we like to come out here and talk to you, our yummy design lovers, and give you a little mini lesson on something in design that we're getting questions about or that we think is important to take care of you on. And also, we love to take your questions about our topic. I've made the commitment for this calendar year to do Facebook Lives every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern. It is not always easy to be out here at 4 p.m. Eastern, given a very heavy design calendar we have here with my amazing team. But so far, so good. I can't believe it's almost April already. We've been doing them for 3 months. So we're going to be changing things up a little bit as we're developing these Facebook Lives. We are definitely always going to let you know what our topic is. And there was a little bit of confusion. I promoted our topic, which it still is going to be, about my talking to you and teaching you a little bit about how to hire the right designer in your area, if that's what you want to do. And the other half of our team had a different message, so they thought it was sort of a Take Your Question Tuesday. It's not. So I'm going to be talking to you about how to hire an interior designer. I will be taking your questions live right now, but questions you have hopefully on the topic about hiring a designer, or if you've had a problem hiring a designer, or if you have a great fabulous outcome after hiring a designer and you want to just give me a quick shout out about that, love to help you with that. Here's why. I have a lot of students who study with me, DIY design lovers, who even after studying with me say, you know what, I'm really busy, or my family and I are really busy. I still want to hire a design professional. Where do I start? It seems like really muddy water. How do you know how to do it right? And again, if you want to post a question about hiring a designer as I'm teaching, you can. And if you want me to take those questions, I'd start posting them now, so I will definitely have time to get to you before we have to scooch on and back into design. So anyway, how do you negotiate those waters, those muddy waters of hiring a designer? And I just want to set the condition with you right now that everything I'm going to share with you has nothing to do with ever hiring me as your interior designer. Let's take me off the table. I'm unavailable. This is about you finding and hiring your ideal designer in your hometown so you can get that gorgeous result and the gorgeous support that you are looking for. So there are some pitfalls that you need to watch out for. So let's face it. Somewhere in your town is the very worst plumber in the world practicing, right? Somewhere in the world is the very worst doctor practicing. The guy or gal who graduated at the very bottom of their class, and they are terrible. You just have to hope you don't meet that doctor when you're, in panties and a Viva paper towel sheet, in an examination room someplace, right? Well, same thing for interior designers. There are so many amazing and talented interior designers across the US, in England, in Canada. I want you to find those amazing designers and the right fit for you as well. We want you to avoid the person who kind of graduated perhaps at the bottom of their class. So there are a few archetypal designers out there that I want you to know about. And I actually wrote a class on this once and I pulled it. I decided not to launch it. So I'll try to summarize it really quickly for you. If you look at the different types of designers that are out there, it allows you to think about what you are as a client. So there are designers who are highly collaborative, and they really want to design with and for you, and they take you on a bit of a design journey, and they really want to know who you are in design. There are also designers that are fairly directive and almost dictatorial. They come in and say, hey, here's what I think we should do. They give you a choice of A, B, or C, but this is really what I think would be best to do here. And they are not as client-driven. They're a little bit more, hey, this is what I think should happen. And then you have what I call the My Way designers, and also talented designers, but My Way designers have a look that they do. They come in and they say, hey, this is what I think. We're doing it this way. This is my look. This is my style. This is what we do. So you really have to know when you're out there looking to hire the right designer, who are you as a client? Do you want a bit of a hybrid between those two? Maybe you want somebody who is very collaborative and then gets directive at some point in your project. The designer that you hire has to match who you are or who you and your design partner are in terms of right outcome. But the one type of designer I want to absolutely make sure that you avoid is the flake bomb. The flake bomb designer is the designer who's uber talented, uber creative, but they don't have systems, they don't have processes, and they drive linear thinking clients crazy. In fact, we had a call from a wonderful couple just yesterday, actually. It feels like it's Friday already, but I know it's not. It's Tuesday. That's because I'm out here on the air with you now in the broadcast. This wonderful couple had a designer work on 2 residences at the same time, and the designer just was not communicating. They never knew where anything was. They came to us with this 2-page punch list of things that still needed to be completed. I felt terrible that they had hired the wrong designer for who they were looking for. They liked his or her work very much. I told them, please don't tell me who this designer is. But the designer crashed and burned on processes. So that brings me to my next step of this lesson. Aside from my wanting you to drill down into the archetypal personality you want in a designer, I want you to know that processes and path are mission critical in design when hiring a design professional. I did an interesting project a couple of years ago. I was working on a book project, and I interviewed interior design professionals and clients across the United States and into Canada. And I asked them all the same question. Please tell me a nightmare story that happened with somebody on the other side of the aisle. If you're a designer, a nightmare story with a client. If you were a client, a nightmare story with a designer. And please tell me a dreamboat story with working with a designer, or a dreamboat story working with a client. And the wonderful stories were all wonderful and not surprising, because designers are wonderful gifts to the design process for sure. But the nightmare stories all had a similar flavor in that they all tracked back to the same 3 problems, or same group of problems. Either 1, the designer was not controlling the budget. That's a no-no. Number 2, the designer did not have clear communication processes and systems in place to continually manage the client's expectations. Or 3, the designer really didn't have processes, a clear beginning, middle, and end point to really wrap it all up in a bow. So if you are out there looking for your ideal designer in your hometown, and I know you will find her, I promise you will, or him, keep searching, make sure you're asking the right questions. I am amazed at the people who never ask me, well, Donna, tell me about your design processes. What does it look like when we sign with you? What are the steps that you're going to take us through? So I want you to be very clear in who you are and ask the right questions so you get the right and most wonderful designer. One of my students shared with me that she was working with the designer and things can seem really fuzzy and she didn't really know who was doing what. I said, what does your contract say? And she said, contract? I said, yes, an agreement. There should be an agreement that spells out exactly what the designer is doing for you, as well as her many or his many roles and responsibilities to you. And then, of course, as a client, you have some roles and responsibilities too, and those are also laid out in your agreement as well. So like I said earlier, this has nothing whatsoever to do with you ever hiring me. I know that there are designers out there, and I was once one too when I was young in the industry. You write a blog post about what to look for in a designer, and at the end, the answer is, so hire me. But I'm telling you right now, this lesson has nothing to do with hiring me. I'm off the table. This is totally about you hiring the best and most wonderful designer in your hometown, okay? So if you have any questions about how to hire a designer, what to ask, what to look for in a portfolio. If you're in the middle of working with a designer and you've got some questions about perhaps a delicate conversation that has to happen, by all means, feel free to post questions in and around how to hire a designer. And I'm just looking to see if there are any questions about how to hire a designer. Right now there are not, so I'm going to add 2 more little components to this lesson. And again, if you have a question about how to hire an interior designer in your area, please do pop that in. So here's something else I want you to know about hiring a designer. You have some roles and responsibilities as well as a client, and one of them is about being very upfront and clear with your budget. And I know that a lot of people in life in general think if you tell a designer or any subcontractor, hey, my budget is $1 million, that they're going to spend $2 million. So you play like a little cat and mouse game on the phone or in an early interview. And in point of fact, because you know you're going to hire and find and identify the most right and ethical professional for your project, don't play cat and mouse on that budget, because your designer needs to know exactly what your total bottom line budget is so that she or he never designs above that budget and thus blows your trust and confidence, or conversely, designs below your expectation of quality. You think they were loopy if they did that also and they disappoint you. So you need to be very clear on your budget. When asked the question, hey, this is a great project, what do you think you wanted to spend on this project? What had you set aside? And I don't know is not an answer. Unless you really don't know, in which case you can say, you know, I'm really not certain, but I was thinking somewhere between 10 and 15, or between 150 and 200,000. You need to have some sort of range that you can present so that the designer knows if your scope is commensurate with your budget. You might have a budget number that you think is really big, but if your scope is even bigger, not going to work, right? So it's about very honest dialogue, very honest communication. And I will share with you too that a long time ago, before I was a trained and practiced interior designer, and grateful to have won some wonderful awards, I was a design client. So I know what it feels like to hire a designer, work with a designer as a client, and see something and feel your project jumping the rails. It is a horrible, horrible feeling. So that's why I wanted to get out here and give you some guidance about how to hire a designer. Okay, we have some questions coming in, so let's see what we have here. All right, my husband, Steve Hoffman. All right, Steve's got a question. Steve's obviously watching from his basement office. Should there be a charge for an initial meeting? Steve, that is really an important question. And I know that, and I promise you, designer's honor, I did not plant that question. Do you know that's a question that gets debated at almost every continuing professional ed course I ever go to with design colleagues? There are some designers who feel, nope, I'm not going to charge. I'm just going to go in and talk to the client, get a sense of them. They'll get a sense of me. But I'm not going to really answer any questions directly because I'm not being paid. I'm going to do things like, I really can't drill down on that, or gee, I don't have enough information about you. And then there's the other camp that feels, hey, I am designing and there should be a charge for that initial consult. I happen to fall into the camp for what it matters. Remember, I'm off the table. Nobody can hire me. But I do charge for an initial meeting. And I don't charge a low number for that initial meeting. I want to see if somebody's serious about hiring a design professional. And I do charge for that first meeting because I want to design. I don't know how to withhold information. If you ask me what would you do with this living room issue that I'm having, I want to start brainstorming with you and designing for you. So I believe there's a lot of takeaway. So my feeling is I do charge. But what I do in my company, and for any designers out there that are watching, I refund 50% of that initial consult toward the deposit for the whole project. So I know there are some people who vehemently do not believe in paying for a session. They want something for free. Other people expect to pay a designer. I personally don't want to work with design clients that don't expect to pay for design services, so I don't want to set that up that I would do a session without. But there are designers who think that it's perfectly within their business paradigm to do that. So, Stephen, thank you for asking that question, and there you go. All righty. So, Shelly's saying hi from Ohio. Hello, Shelly. Terry Reynolds, is certification important, and what certification is best? You know, Terry, I remember when I wanted to leap out of the television world. I was an on-air show host at a shopping network for a number of years, and then I worked behind the scenes in my own business, helping other people go on TV, etc. And when I decided I would go back to design school, because it was really my first and great love, professionally, not including Steve Hoffman, who obviously is watching from his basement office, I knew I needed training. And I had talked to a wonderful design mentor of mine, and I said, hey, you know, would you consider hiring me? She said, I would, but not without you going back to get training. Do not be a dilettante. If you're going to take money from people, you are a highly responsible party for whatever it is you're doing. So you absolutely have to get training. So Terry, you can either do a post-baccalaureate degree. Well, obviously somebody of college age would go to school and study design, interior architecture or interior design. Post-baccalaureate, you can do a 2-year post-baccalaureate. You can do a certification as well. For certifications, usually those programs are anywhere from a year to a year and a half. It depends upon the college that you're looking at. I think you should just look at what you want to do to make sure you're getting that right training. If you want to do commercial, I don't know if a certification alone would be enough for you. If you want to do residential, it needs to be a good certification. And and the downside of a lot of design training today, whether it's bachelor degree, master's degree, post-baccalaureate, or certification, nobody's teaching the business of running a business. Right, Katie? Yeah, Katie's going, yeah, and this is a very weird, complicated business model. And I know some really talented people who said, hey, I thought about going into design, and I looked at the business model, and I said, yeah, see ya. So I would go for the best training you can find, Terry, and it'll keep you feeling confident and calm inside your own skin. And clients need confident and calm from their designer. They need to know that the designer knows what she or he is doing and that they're clear and on point with it. So that's a good question. Thank you. Lori Lewis wants to know what percentage of the budget goes toward the designer's fees. Lori, that's such a good question. I think it really varies. It can be as much as 25% of the total budget. It can be far less than that. Designers charge in a multitude of ways. Are you guys aware of that? Some designers do flat fee for their services and then the cost of all the furniture. Some designers do hourly with furniture at retail minus a percentage. Some designers do hourly with wholesale plus a percentage. And so your question, Lori, is a very valid one, but it depends on, is it a design build? Is it a square footage price? So it's a little bit tricky and dicey to come up with a solid percentage for you there. If you are a designer asking me that question, you really want to sit down with pen and paper and really calculate what type of service you think that project will require. Because whether the budget is $1 million or $500,000, if it's the same room count with the same scope, the hours are the hours are the hours. So you can't necessarily make say that your percentage of fee will always be the same based upon project budget size. Okay, hopefully that answers you, and feel free to send me a follow-up. Linda wants to know, when could you use a redesign consultant instead of a certified interior designer? Linda, I don't know what state you're calling from in the US. Some states, many states do not require certification of designers. The state of Florida, I know, does, but many states do not require designers to be certified. So I don't know where you live, so that's an answer there. Redesign is its own little animal. Redesigners come in, use what you have, push it around, throw in some accessories, make some minor cosmetic changes. One day redesign used to be really a really popular trend for a while. It seems to kind of lost some of its steam, right, Katie? I'm not seeing as much of that around. And it depends upon the scope of your project. I should really teach you guys what you should be saying to designers to find out how much design service you need on the phone. Maybe we'll have to do like a part 2 on this. So Linda, I'm going to tell you that you need to know what your total project scope is and have an honest dialogue with the designer. This is the outcome I'd love to have. This is the scope of our project. What do you think? Do you think this is something that's a good fit for you? Remember, you're looking for fit with you, fit with your budget, and fit with personality-wise. Got to be a great fit, okay? So hopefully that answers you, Linda, and if you have a follow-up, feel free to send it. April has a question about design budget. How do designers charge for their time? Is it a percentage of the overall hourly or something else? Okay. All right, April. I read that very quickly. My New Yorker is coming out. I'll say it a little more slowly. April wants to know about the design budget. How do designers charge for their time? Is it a percentage of the overall? Is it hourly or something else? April, there are a couple of things. Some designers charge per square foot on a new design build. Some designers, many designers, are charging hourly. There are a number of designers who charge fixed fee, meaning tell me what your project is. I'm going to come up with one fixed fee for that project. The problem as a designer with fixed fee is that if you have a client who's very indecisive or a chatty client, doesn't use time well, you can totally undershoot how much time they will be taking up on a fixed fee. So fixed fee can be really good for clients who want to know exactly where their fees are going to land. They don't want any surprises through or at the end of the project, but do know that in most fixed fee projects, if you fall out of the box, for example, for your XYZ design project, you will have 2 selections plus 1 reselection round of everything I'm showing to you. If you fall out of that and you start needing hourly service, guess what? You're going to start, accruing hours. The other way designers charge is hourly. In the United States, the average, designers charge anywhere from as little as $85 an hour up to over $350 per hour. But the basic average in the US right now is still holding steady at about $150 per hour. There are all kinds of designers out there. You have to remember, there are some people who are kind of doing it as a hobby, kind of on the side. They did their own home and now they're thinking, hey, if somebody else wants me to do something for them, they're not trained. Those are generally the peeps that are charging in that $85 an hour area. And then, of course, more training, more experience, people will have different fees. And also, designers set their fees based upon what kind of clients they want. I know when I first started practicing, I wanted to be the designer for everyone. I wanted to help everyone. And then I saw very quickly I couldn't make a living if I was trying to be the designer for the people who really were trying to, really wanted to do it on their own with, an hour of consultation time from me. I saw that that was not the market segment I could make a living serving. So I chose to focus on the luxury market. So I set my fee accordingly, commensurate with my talent and my training as well, and my years in the business, I should say, not my talent, my years and experience. How's that? So hopefully that helps you in terms of how designers charge, what the fees are right now as well. And I'll say too that in the cities, generally speaking, designers in LA are charging more than designers in the suburbs of, pick a state. So New York, LA, Dallas, Chicago, Philadelphia, those city centers will very likely and often have designers with higher rates per hour than in the burbs, but not always. And certainly you can see a difference between the cost of a designer in LA versus Chicago. Cost of living, is part of that as well. So time for 2 more questions. Let's see. Terry has a little story here. We hired a designer for a kitchen, bath, flooring, lighting, remodel. All she wanted to do was new drapes, furniture, etc., before we even had an estimate for the remodel of the kitchen, baths, and flooring. What should we ask first for the next one? Well, Terry, I'm sorry that happened. So you hired a designer who had an agenda, right? Remember I told you about the best designer in your area and the not greatest? I remember when Stephen and I were first married and we wanted to hire a designer before I'd gone back to school and studied design. We had somebody come in on our first meeting. Over the phone, I told her, this is what we're looking for. And she asked over the phone, do you looking for wallpaper? And at the time I said, no, we really don't want any wallpaper. Walked in with armloads of wallpaper books, had a clear agenda. You don't want that. So the kind of questions you want to ask when you call a designer, number 1, you never want to lead off with, hi, my name is so-and-so, what do you charge? As soon as a designer hears that, they know you're dialing for designers and you're just trying to find the lowest cost designer, not the best value. And by best value, I mean somebody who's going to deliver everything you want at a price you feel is fair and reasonable. So the way to really approach a designer so they think you're serious and don't want to get off the phone with you very quickly, you want to say things like, hi, I really love your work, buttering up a designer, never a bad thing to do. Loved you, saw you on House, or you recommended to me by so-and-so. I'd love to talk to you about our project, and I'd also love to talk to you about your philosophies, your services, your fees, your availability. So, is this a good time? So you'll have that conversation, and you want to tell this designer, absolutely, in your case, what is my scope? This is what happened with, this is what we have on our docket. This is what we'd love to accomplish. How do you work? Tell me what your process is. How would you approach a project like this? Do I meet with you first to look at the project and then go to contract with you? Can you walk me through all of that? Find out what their process is. Find out what their availability is. When would you be available to start something like that if we should go to agreement with you? You want to ask as many questions that will lead to the answer that you're hoping to hear. And then if you don't hear that answer, then you know it's not the right designer. You may want to meet with 1 or 2 or 3 designers before you sign on the dotted line with somebody. If you have a more specific question than what I've just shared with you, by all means, pop it in. But I will say this, a smart designer in talking to you, now that you've had a miss with that client, with that designer, Terry, a smart designer is going to ask you, hey, have you ever worked with a designer before? And if you say yes, they're going to go, whoop, why aren't you working with that designer again? Now, if the answer is that designer retired, they moved, I moved, they died, sorry, but those are all legitimate answers. But if the answer is, you know, we've worked with 3 designers and we've fired all of them, a designer on the other end of the phone is going to think, one miss with a designer, perfectly fine. Somebody didn't, you know, it wasn't a good hire decision. But if you're cycling through designers thinking it's them, it's not me, chances are, baby cakes, it's you. So the designer on the other end of the phone is going to be a little suspicious if you're cycling through designers. Now, if you've had a miss with the designer, for example, this client that called me this week, who we're not taking on, we couldn't fit them in, but I really drilled down with them, what went wrong with this designer? And I said, you know, they said she wasn't using processes. I said, well, question, do you think there was anything you did that encouraged that designer to not use their processes? Like, hey, let's not do a space plan upstairs. I'm in a hurry with these extra rooms we've added. Or, hey, this will just take 10 minutes. Nothing in design takes 10 minutes. Me walking to the cabinet and deciding what flavor gum I should pick out sometimes can take me 10 minutes, okay? So I asked the client, this potential client, were there things that you did that maybe helped that project jump the rails in any way? And based upon their answers, sounded like it was a designer-driven, you know, problem. So I want you to be really clear in asking for what you need and be prepared to be asked, have you worked with a designer before? And be prepared to answer to that, you know, what went wrong or why you're not working with that person again. So we have one more question, time for one more question. Bum, bum, bum. Good answer, thank you, you're welcome. Elaine, I wish you had found me before you purchased new furniture and hired a designer. Well, listen, Elaine, remember, I'm off the table. This is not about you hiring me at all, at all. This is about you hiring and finding the most wonderful designer in your neighborhood, in your town, in your city. I know we have people joining us across the U.S. and in Canada and England. We've had people from the United Arab Emirates. I hope I'm saying that right. I'm sorry if you're there and I'm not saying it right. Australia, people have been joining us from. So I want you to find your wonderful designer in those areas, but I thank you for the compliment. Okay, lovelies, listen, I have overstayed my welcome. We are going to be doing another Facebook Live next Tuesday, same time, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, but we're going to be broadcasting from the New York Design Center. We're going to take you into one of our fave showrooms, and we're going to show you some of the things that we're popping into projects. And by all means, don't forget, follow us on Instagram. Give us a follow at decorating.genius. There's a little dot in there, but there it is. So at decorating.genius. Keep us company on Instagram, and I cannot wait to see you next week from the New York Design Center. Bye, everybody.